Hey, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I just saw that.
Yeah, it's celebrated it this past weekend.
Cool. How old are you now?
Like 30. I turned 24.
Yeah, I think I have corns older than you. That sounds fun. I had mine last week on the 26th. I think it was it Monday last week? I can't remember now.
I think so. You said you went to the Red
Yeah,
Coat
it was Monday.
Tavern.
What's that?
You said you went to the Red Coat Tavern?
Yeah, and the bartender bought me a beer, and then, you know, it's just like this wherever you go, you inevitably realize that you can't give anybody the finger because you probably know them in some way. So when you're like driving hurriedly to a meeting and you get cut off, you know, by Fodger, for example, who's sitting here with us, you can't give Fodger the finger because you realize that you're going to be interviewing with Fodger, right? When you get to the meeting that he was driving to,
Yeah.
or something even more important than that. So we're sitting at the bar, and Tracy announced to Brett, the bartender, that it was my birthday. He's going to buy me a drink, and we get to talking. And this guy's a pastor at a church in Lake Orion who's hired Mary Kay Lancaster's firm, which is Stephen Auger, right out of like the Lake Orion community. So as we're talking to him about his project, I said, "Well, do you know?" I said, "I know Stephen because I worked with him on Rotary." And I said, "Do you know Mary Kay?" He goes, "She's my architect." I go, "Well, she's a former student of mine." And so it's just like this amazing nexus, right?
Wow. Really is such a small world when it comes to things like that.
Yeah, when you think about how big Detroit is, you know, and how many people live in this area, and the Tri-County area that is kind of surrounding Detroit, including like Washtenaw. Yeah, it's a really small community.
Yeah. We ended up going to the Red Coat after I heard you mention that you went there.
Oh, yeah, it's a great place. Were you able to get in?
Yeah. It was on a Wednesday night, so.
Yeah, sometimes that's dodgy. I could never get in there. Even just going to the bar, it can be packed. You can never see anything when you walk in there either. That's the other thing.
To wait for your eyes to adjust.
Casey, have you been there yet? To the Red Coat Tavern?
On Woodward?
On Woodward in Royal Oak?
Yeah, I've been there.
It's in my backyard.
I was there like a month and a half ago. Pretty good. I just got chicken tenders, so you know.
Oh, God. No wonder you're out of money.
I heard it was a burger place.
It is. If you like chicken, go to Gus's across the street and down from that at 13 in Woodward. It's in the former Starbucks next to Bell Tire. Trevor, have you been to Red Coat yet?
Yeah, I've been there, but I can't afford it, so I think I'm probably going to be like a one and done.
Yeah, it can get pricey when you start, you know, adding French fries onto everything. Right? No, we always split when we go there. We always split something, so that makes it a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, definitely. I stick to my beef jerky.
That's what I take to the golf course. Okay, I feel like I have some things to catch up with you guys on. I'll wait till everybody gets here. Yeah, maybe I better make a list. Yeah, we're almost all here. One, two, three, 8. Okay, I think we're going to have to get started. I've resent invites to, I think, everybody. We're nearly all here. Okay, I've got about half a dozen things I need to go over with you guys. And the first one is when we had our Benchmark 2 review a couple of weeks ago, it coincided with the Larry Scarpa lecture. And I watched that over the weekend. And, you know, if I can find it on YouTube, I'm certain that you can. So it's, and I think that Professor Farrow sent you a link to it. So my point is, you all need to watch this lecture. Thank you. It's actually very palatable. It's very easy to understand, and yet at the same time, and this is what's so interesting, it is a very high-level talk. It's a very sort of cerebral talk about design and about the execution of design in the practice, right, of arguably one of the most important architecture firms in the country right now, doing work at all different kinds of scales. Oh, someone's trying to, I've invited all of them. Let me try Nathaniel again. Hold on a second. Okay, doing work at all kinds of scales. Most most interestingly, mixed-use housing projects, school renovations, and a completely innovative AIA award-winning project for the entire city of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, which is going through a major stormwater crisis there. That they get something called daytime flooding. In other words, when the high tide comes in, it comes in from below and it comes in from both sides because of the physical sort of configuration of Fort Lauderdale. So you can, it's called blue sky. It's called blue sky flooding. And so what happens is the entire city gets 2 to 3 feet of flood water just by virtue of these surges, which is making the city uninhabitable and actually dangerous. And the proposal that, which is the last component of his talk, the proposal that he's calling for in terms of the regeneration is a very provocative idea. So I really need you to fire that up, spend an hour looking at it, and I think you'll be inspired like I was. The work is really, really radical. The drawings that he showed are really, just kind of like your drawings, your in-process drawings. So there was nothing kind of beautiful or polished about them. They were beautiful because they were clearly evidencing the way that he thinks about architecture. So the Larry Scarpa lecture is, for me, the highlight of the non-teaching aspect of my semester so far. And speaking of another important lecture, we have Dustin Atchell. Dustin is a graduate of the Lawrence Tech Master's Program 2 years ago, and the University of Cincinnati program 5 years ago or so. He's a registered architect. He's on faculty at Lawrence Tech, as many of you know, and he will be giving a talk on Thursday evening at 5:30 p.m. on campus. Professor Farrow has arranged for a room for this to occur in. I will be on campus for this talk, Hong, and I expect you to be there. So I'm talking to you, Hong. Yeah, I'm talking to you. That's my Robert De Niro voice. So this is a very important conversation regarding energy modeling, which is a high stakes option in the extra effort for the options effort for Benchmark 3. Let's see. This is really kind of a courtesy to you. This may already have happened. I'm actually not sure, but I suspect that the course schedule for summer, perhaps even the fall semester, is out. So if it's not, you need to look for that and make sure that you register on time so that you get the choices that you want. Number 4, I've invited the critics that we've had. That would be Jason, Betsy Williams, and Michael DeCoster to come in on Thursday and on Tuesday, the 26th and 24th, for final reviews. And I've also invited Sarah Ramsey Briggs. Sarah's an architect at Y out in Los Angeles, and we're working closely together on the so-called Big Boy site here in Detroit. When she flies in, I get a chance to see her and her colleague Gregory Fisher. So Sarah will be joining us via Google Hangouts for the final reviews on the Thursday evening session. Number 5, I suspect that we're going to get you to, I suspect that you're going to see the course evaluation soon. So I'm going to start that NAG process to make sure that you participate in those and do that as sort of quickly as they come in so that you have nothing else to think about. And you can turn me off whenever I start nagging again. And finally, 6, let's see. Oh, no, I guess 3 and 6 were sort of the same. Oh, no, 6 is the class schedule as it relates to the end of the semester. So really we have including tonight, I think only 7 more sessions, right? So we are flying at 130 miles an hour into the end of the semester. And that means that we will have 2 classes this week and next. We will not have classes the week of the 17th and the 19th. That is crunch week. That's hell week. We'll have the reviews on the 24th and the 26th. Those are required. Those will be on campus. And we will have the final wrap-up session like we did last Thursday night. We will have that on Tuesday, May 1st. And we will be sort of finished for the semester. And by the way, for the May 1st class, you will have your benchmark 3 grades in hand probably that Sunday evening. So I will process those grades as quickly as I can between Thursday and Sunday and return them to you. Are there any questions about those 6 points? Good. Okay. So tonight's class is 4 desk crits. And 3 desk crits that will start on Thursday night after Dustin's lecture. So the start time for that class will be sort of a few minutes after Dustin's lecture because I need to say goodbye to him. He's driving in from Grand Rapids to deliver this lecture, and he's driving back that night. I haven't seen him since December, so it will probably take about a 15-minute transition time. And that's why we've reorganized the week that way. So who are we talking with first tonight, please?
Me and Trevor.
Okay, so I'll let you all go. Come back a little bit later. I think it's probably going to be around 8:30, if I'm not mistaken. And we can be available for Professor Farrow, who I think will be joining us shortly. I've also invited him to the current session. But in any event, he may have some follow-up things to go over. So let's see. Okay, Alec, I have you on the screen.
Trevor, did you want to take over the first part? You wanted to?
Cool. Yeah, I can do that. I have. So to be honest with you, right now, I kind of have like a lot of balls in the air at one time. So. And I had everything all lined up and then lost internet for a minute and had to restart. So I'm pulling everything back onto my screen. I'm just going to screen share with you real quick to show what we're working on to get some renders started and laid out in 3 dimensions. So here we go. Can you see that?
I can.
So this is our SketchUp model, and I ran into some issues with the file size. So I've isolated everything that is only our building, and then I'm going to plop this into the site model that Nathan shared with us earlier this semester.
Yeah.
I just took, just so you, I guess I'm hoping you have a little peace of mind based on the views that I was selecting. We should experiment with using. Can you see that on my screen?
Yeah. Okay.
So they're really choppy graphics because I just took them out real quick and I'm cleaning this model up right now. But we're really easily, as I think you mentioned in your office, you guys use SketchUp to kind of have that base and then decorate it a little bit more in Photoshop. So I'm in the SketchUp phase with that right now. I can only run one program at a time, like SketchUp, Lumion, or Photoshop, because they all are so gigantic. So that's one view that we're looking at. Another one to show this community space right here that we can also put some entourage in, and then show the relationship between these John R. and Alfred facing community patios, I guess I'll call them. And then I've also started some preliminary landscape design for the courtyard, but that's a little bit harder to show in terms of a deliverable because a lot of it at this point is research on what types of vegetation I would be proposing to put in. So we're thinking, or I'm thinking more about it as somewhat of a green roof. because we have the underground parking below in a lot of that area. So I'm thinking either some raised beds or a lot of sedum could probably do what we are hoping in terms of making it a more pedestrian friendly space. And then also, it doesn't, we're proposing something that's a little bit more pragmatic than trying to plop a bunch of, mature trees where 1 foot below you're going to have cars, driving around. So that's where I'm making progress right now in terms of the courtyard and our visualization techniques. There are a lot of other balls in the air too with the other options that we're running, but I'm just trying to hone in on one at a time. So
just permit me to ask this question about the views. Are those going to be like final rendering view sheds?
You're saying like, is this all we'll have for the final? Because that would be no. We have the idea is I just wanted to show you those two because I'm scrambling to pull them back up that I had all on my screen.
Well, that was my hunch. I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, that we have. So the idea is with this existing in its context in 3 dimensions that we can use it for any view that that we see fit. So we have intentions to have the corridor that shows downtown from the community area on the courtyard side, and then a few other ones as well that after our desk crit's over, I'll spend a minute to gather them all and send them to you in an email so that you can see.
Yeah, I feel good about that answer. I mean, I just wasn't clear in terms of what you were saying.
Yeah.
The things, the pieces that you clipped, particularly, for instance, the corner elevated rendering of the notch there at the hard corner, is as much a rendering of the whole building and some of the context as it is of that thing. And I just, that view doesn't need to be as maybe broad, or it doesn't need to capture as much, because the focus is just of that notch. It's just of that community space. So I feel like that can be more cropped in a vertical sort of way. And so that's why I asked that question, because it looked like it was trying to do double duty, be the money shot, but also talk descriptively, about that condition. So hearing that these are sort of in process views of key things that you're trying to describe relational to the design or the intent of the design of the building, and that you're going to do sort of other views or additional views that are, for all intents and purposes, money shots, right? The ones that you're going to spend time rendering. Then I'd like to say I want to be in that conversation with you guys about where exactly that view is taken, as it relates to the extents or the sort of left and right limits. And I'm saying this to you guys, Alec and Trevor, but I'm also meaning it to say, like this week and next week, that's kind of a key thing that I want to talk about in your own work. And where the view is, where the camera is relational to the ground plane. I think a lot of us look at this opportunity as, form givers to these developments as sort of powerful. And so we do something that's completely unnatural, which is fly in the air and take a view of the building from above, which is, I think, a very limiting or rare perspective of architecture. I think really, if you look at some of the best renderings, they're the ones that are on the street, a view that you or me may have, walking down the street or riding our bike. And I think those are the views and the elevations that I'm kind of keen on encouraging you. So if you have any questions, like right now, about where you should take it, you're going to hear that from me for the next week or two.
Right. I plan to follow up with you. Unfortunately, as you might know from rendering in your own office, when you're in process of, trying to clean up the model, and these really large files are what you have to work with, it doesn't really necessarily cater to snapshots for
I know, but if there's a way that you all can do a kind of a storyboard, whether it's hand drawn or a quick crude SketchUp wireframe view, I would be delighted to look at that.
Right. That's what I intend to send you after our the conclusion of our desk crit tonight, just so you have it for a reference.
Okay, that's point one. Point two, Alec and Trevor, I was thinking that we had a pretty sort of interesting conversation last week about the patterns, the horizontal patterns and the vertical patterns, and we looked at David Salmella's work briefly, and where we saw that being manifest, at least in that one building and maybe several others, if you explored that site even further. And then we talked a little bit about varying degrees of, as I recall, transparency. So something that's transparent, translucent, and then maybe perforated or opaque. And so I see that SketchUp model tonight, and I don't see any like progress or, I guess, evolution of that earlier conversation. So I'm wondering if there's something that Alec or you, Trevor, want to move us forward on.
That's typically when I do renderings out of SketchUp, I usually address the skin materials in Photoshop afterward, because I find it a little bit easier and just more user-friendly to manipulate and then put on a layer that I can turn off. Because if I do everything and bog down the SketchUp model, then I put all this work into one model that could easily crash at any moment. So I like to try and get kind of the skeleton done, and then everything a color that I can use afterward to apply those textures in Photoshop after.
So I guess I'd like to say to you all, and I have a feeling, you guys, that you're comfortable working that way, and I have a feeling that that's kind of the way you've perhaps been encouraged to work in other studios. But I kind of want to put my foot out and trip you. I can't think of a better way to put it. I kind of want you to I want you to stop walking or running in a direction that you've habituated, and I want to change your habit. And so the habit I want to have you consider, right, is to print like an elevation or a 3D view of and you should all do this, is what I'm saying. So I'm using you as like an example or a scapegoat here, but print an elevation to scale of the elevation, the main elevations, right? And do hand-drawn overlays of what you're talking about, and lay one sort of sheet of onion skin and test something, and then do another sheet over it and test something else. So in the conversation that we've been having, you can do color blocking for one thing. You could do pattern shifts and orientations for another. You could, and if you settle down or settle into a pattern in terms of directionality, for example, as it relates to a specific material, for example, then you can do widths or heights of it in test drawings that are quicker and more nimble a process of hand drawings than the SketchUp model, by your own admission. So I want to encourage you to move as designers from what I would call kind of the digital modality or mode of thinking to an analog mode of thinking, and go back and forth. Let one happen comfortably, and then test it in other conventions, like in an overlay drawing and elevation, and then let the elevation drawing feed the digital mode. Sure. Here's why. And I think I've alluded to this earlier. You will think more quickly, and you will see more relationships more expediently, more quickly in the analog mode than you will in the 3D mode.
Right.
The other thing is that you will re-engage a muscle that you are all, with all due respect, a little flabby with, right? You've let that muscle like maybe languish a little, or get sort of, fat, like the muscles under my arms, right? and you will strengthen a muscle that will help you in your office, right? Because if you can draw things to test ideas, you will begin drawing as a way of thinking and making judgments about your design, so that SketchUp becomes kind of the recording tool, right? The way that charcoal is a tool, the recording tool. So it's not having to think so much. I'm just trying to recapture your role more resolutely in this process. So I encourage all of you to think that way, you know, and it's not just you two, and it's not just elevations, right? Of course, you're probably saying, oh, you know, I could probably do this with sections, right? And I could probably, you know, right? I could do this with plans and ceiling plans, so that the act of drawing in a digital mode like CAD or Revit is quicker, right? And you're using it more expediently. You're using it more, I think, efficiently, right?
Right.
So that's something that I think I think that's one way I would encourage you. And it doesn't have to be like a felt tip pen. It could be colored pencils or markers, which are even faster, right?
Right.
So speed is the name of the game here, and I'm here to tell you, and you're going to hear it probably a few more times this semester, but you will think faster and make better judgments if you move between digital and analog.
Yeah.
And at the end of it all, isn't that what you want?
Yeah, and that's kind of how we achieved the
as I know, right? Yeah, you did that.
last-
You did that in the sort of 3D renderings.
the benchmark. I forget what benchmark is, but those are the ones that I think you were
benchmark 1 and 2.
Yeah. So I guess we could recede into that technique to hopefully help speed along this process. I don't think this goes away altogether, so to say, but that could be. I think that could help us get what we need to you quicker. So
yep.
I'll definitely.
And that's the other thing, right? I think you can take photographs of it with your phone, and you know those analog drawings, and then ship them off to Professor Farrow or me. You know, it's a lot easier that way.
I like the name analog drawing.
Yeah, because I'm old enough to remember things like, you know, albums, right? Not CDs. I'm old enough to remember, you know, acoustic guitar and then the electric guitar. So I think there's something to be said for the sort of regeneration or the reindoctrination of the brain as the brain and the pen that have a direct connection between the way we design versus just thinking about clicks of a mouse.
Right.
And I just feel like that's a really important muscle for you to continue.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. Alec, do you have anything that you wanted to add on your end of things?
I've been working on the plumbing plan a little bit. I've been running into some issues, especially along the John R. Wall or section of the building, just because the restrooms don't line up. Let me pull up the plan.
These are like bathrooms and powder rooms in the units that don't light up.
Yeah, the restrooms. So I
Here we go.
All right. So all the units on this half of the building here, they all line up. So all the restrooms, the plumbing core, the core risers, they all line up for like soil stack and vents. But on this side, we have the size of the room units change between floors, so they don't line up. I turned on the underlay so you can see. So they line up a little bit here below, like the toilet and tub, but then on other places they're in completely opposite sides of the room. So I took a section and I've been trying to work out how these
Is
plumbing.
it possible that the corridors from the one level to the other do line up?
The corridors line up.
So is it also possible then that the corridor wall could be the wall that consolidates and bundles these sort of meandering stacks? Could that wall be the thing that gathers them? Can you locate those stacks in those corridor walls?
Oh, ceiling plan. Let's see, potentially.
They don't shift that much.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like they do, Dan.
So
You can move these things laterally. So as long as that corridor line could be
about 6
held,
feet.
I think you're fine.
Yeah, me too. I mean,
So-
they don't have to. So like at one building in Birmingham that when I was with Victor's office, we worked on the Willets, and the second floor was different than the third floor. The third floor was the same as the fourth floor, but the fifth floor was different than everything below it.
So let's look at that space you're showing me right now. It looks like there's some sort of closet there next to that one sink. It's all boxed out. Is that right?
Here with the
Yeah. Is that like an HVAC chase or something?
no, that's for the water heater.
Yeah, it looks like a
So I
water. It
would
just doesn't
suggest
have a
that
door
in
on it.
that- I would suggest that in that space, you put the stack, the vent stack that's rising, right?
Uh-huh.
And then that feeds the units on either side of it for like 7 or 8 feet.
Right, but the thing is this wouldn't be able to go vertically between all those 4 residential floors.
But not the whole thing doesn't have to. Maybe one of the walls in that room does. And I'm suggesting that maybe the corridor wall, the hall wall, could
Yeah.
be that wall. Because as I think I understood you to say, that wall is coplanar.
Right. Yeah. This is I think the corridor wall would be the best opportunity. So getting it would have the wastewater would have to go probably
The wastewater
down.
runs laterally in a soffitted ceiling in the space below to, let's just say, the corridor wall.
Yeah.
And then it runs down and it has a vent stack that rises up.
Or take a look at that wall where it looks like the bathrooms are lined. And
Yeah.
designate a section as long as you can find that looks like it occurs in the same location on all floors. And that's the region.
Yeah, that's originally where I took this section here and I started creating room
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
But
Right.
again, then I started in the section view, I started running into issues with the structure. So, for example, this was where one of them was, and then getting close to the beams.
That's actually a point I was going to talk about tonight. Soil stacks over beams are not a good idea.
Right.
And so are toilets.
Probably found that out.
Yeah, toilets over beams is also crappy, pun intended, right? Because you have to drill a core through that deck, and the beams, depending on their choice, right? They may have flanges, they may have
width.
other beams in them.
So you should probably figure out that you are going to have to fur out that space to avoid the beam.
Yeah.
And I realize that in apartments every inch matters.
What was that?
I realize that in apartments every inch matters.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's when stuff gets fun, right? And that's kind of the fun you're having, Alec.
There is another issue in this too, and that is tolerances. You know, you have to assume like a building of this dimension, concrete's going to be having a tolerance, I don't know, maybe a ½ inch.
Yeah.
So and also things like if you've got a concrete floor system, you got to expect that they are going to block out your chase, because you don't want to have to go back and cut it out later, right? And you don't want things like rebars running through that.
Mhm.
they're going to block that out, and they need to have some room because things might not be exactly aligned.
Right. I
And
think,
those pipes are probably 4 to 6 inches, right?
yeah, it's 4-inch. I have it as a 4-inch.
Sounds about right.
Based on the resources you gave me, it seems like 4 inches would be
Right.
sufficient.
Right.
So I think moving to the corridor wall will help. Dealing with
How many units are we talking about? And I guess the other question is,
You can see them in elevation.
why are the units, or why couldn't the units, let me put it a little bit more sort of softly, why couldn't the units stack, for example? Is it because you were trying to achieve a blend?
Yeah, so I to reach the unit count, we needed to alternate between floors, how many units fit along John R. So if I go to the ask me to save. We go to the 3D view. The units, the third and the fifth floor are equivalent, and then the second and the fourth are equivalent. Because
So you really made it hard on yourself.
yeah, where the rest of the area, the rest of the units are they stack perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
But because we have this odd corner, the number of units we couldn't get 50 units.
Yeah, you're learning a good lesson here.
Mm-hmm.
Can we just go back to the plan again real quick? And maybe let me just look at one level, like 3, and then we'll look at 4, because those are not the same, correct?
Correct. So let me turn off the underlays on them so it's easier to read.
And let's just look at one unit, like 408 or 410, whatever's breaking your back.
All right, so this is level 4, so 408. Common unit.
But that wall that's at the back of the bathroom, so to speak, in 408, the thick wall right there, is that not a common location for all the plumbing walls all the way through? In other words, it's about 5 feet from the corridor wall. Is that correct?
Yeah, they're not all vertically. They will all line up.
And that's what matters, isn't it?
Well, not vertically, but in this, they will line up in this section.
Okay.
But the issue is that the restrooms don't line up vertically, so they're shifted horizontally between floors. So this is level 3.
But what I'm saying is that, like at 308, the tub, toilet, sink, even the water heater line up on a wall that is still more or less in the same plane. I think it's in the exact same plane as the floor above.
Mm-hmm.
So that wall is the gathering wall. That wall is your chase wall.
Right.
As far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
As long as that section of the wall is intact at every level, that's where the stack goes.
Right.
And indeed, that wall, I think your instincts were right, guys. I mean, I think that wall may need to get fatter than
Yeah, I think it does.
a 3 5/8 inch metal stud. Because you may have.
Yeah, we're gonna.
It's
You're gonna have
your wall in, the 3
Right.
5/8.
I know you're probably not going to use galvanized, pipe for the. I'm sorry. I know you're not going to use iron pipe for the waste vent, but you're still going to have collars every few feet, and
Right.
so you need that wall to be a little bit fatter. I don't know that it needs to be double walls. It could just be a big stud wall, like a 2x8 wall or a 2x6 wall.
That would be safer.
Yeah, you've got it hefty. I also think I think just experientially that door slamming right into that bathroom wall
Mhm.
is a bit abrupt. So maybe that courtesy indent that you have from the hall to the door could reduce
Yeah.
to like 6 inches
Right.
from like the 18 or 16 that you've got
Yeah.
it at.
I think.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to be that dramatic. It's making its point.
Right. Okay.
But I think the stacks and supply lines and the waste lines, all of that stuff can go in those walls. Where else does this happen? Is it just like these units?
Yeah. These are the only units that I have trouble with. I was having trouble with. The only question from there is how many of these toilets can each stack serve? So I'd have to look back into some of the resources that Professor Farrell gave me about.
There can be quite a few of them.
Yeah. So I'm just concerned about the distances of the pipe so if I could move the stack to the.
I don't think six or
or I would have to move
7
that
feet
to
is
this.
bad. I think it's reasonable. I don't think 6 or 7 feet's unreasonable.
Yeah.
I agree. Really, you have an easy problem. The hard problem, Alec, is when plumbing pipe has to run laterally to drain.
Right.
Right? That's when it starts breaking your back and you start griping. Your problem is really solved by this wall. This wall that separates the hall from the bathroom is your savior, right? It's where this stuff has got to go.
And there's no beam there.
Right, and it's a long wall, so you could stack several floors.
So that's a lot of blue sky from where I see it.
I love that line. That's exactly right.
Only when I'm on the 3rd and the 5th floor, that's where I'm getting concerned because there's a beam here.
So
Yeah,
so-
you gotta miss that.
so then maybe the bathroom has to be redesigned.
Uh-huh.
Or you miss it. You go past it and move it across the wall above that or below the beam. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
The beam's only in a
Moving the
small
stack, yeah.
segment.
But then the drainage would be a little different. So this stack couldn't serve this toilet because of the beam here, right? It would be able to serve.
Are you having a combined vent and drainage stack?
Yes.
And you need to have a 1 in 12 slope for the drainage, right?
Right. Yeah.
As long as that, my answer is as long as that works, you're okay.
Right.
Is that helpful?
You
okay?
I mean, that's kind of where I've been. It's just it runs into this beam, or it gets close. So I don't think there's. Go back to that section. So
is that unit the whiny unit? Is that the unit that's causing you the most problem?
Yeah, it's along column line W. So it's
Yeah, I see the beam.
It's close. It's close enough to be concerned.
right.
But like if we go back to that plan, I think that closet in that one unit could go. I think that the closet that is the bedroom closet could go to the bathroom, and the closet could move to another wall.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's another option.
Right.
Or the bedroom could just get smaller because this bedroom has that little bump out in the facade, you know.
Oh, it's on the 5th floor.
Yeah, look how you did it in the unit above. You rotated the whole bathroom.
Right.
You had the whole bathroom running east and west in 408, I think.
Yeah. Open in.
Mm-hmm. And you still kept the closet where it was. So that's another option.
Okay. Yeah, I think I think that's probably a better option than.
Yeah, and you would see that very quickly with tracing paper, right? Onion skin.
Mm-hmm. And then I can move the closet over here.
Yeah, that's where I thought that could go.
Uh-huh. Okay.
What's the box near where your cursor is? Up there.
The linen closet.
Yeah, so there's a door off of that little hall there, or in the bathroom.
Yeah. Need to need to model in place.
Mm-hmm. And where's the door for the water heater? Is it the whole wall or most of the wall? Or is it a 2-leaf door that opens out like
A bifold or something.
yeah, or French doors or something like that?
Yeah, I was thinking, a not a sliding door, the 2-leaf
Okay.
right here.
It looks like the doors are missing from all the closets.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 2-leaf door type. There's I need to create one in Revit because there's no family that I could find. So.
And I guess you're going to see that column on the outside of the building at that patio or balcony,
Yeah.
right?
So does that has to get boxed in though, right?
Yeah.
That would be my other point. It
Mhm.
probably ought to be boxed in.
Yep.
What is the cladding system again?
It's metal panel.
Okay. And again, I would try to find maybe part of that cladding system that could actually be your balcony and your handrail.
Mm.
Professor Farlow and I don't like using Revit's number 6 standard handrails and guardrails. So
Mm-hmm.
Like you're showing on your SketchUp model. Those
I know,
are design opportunities for
we're
you guys.
just picking up. We're picking on you.
Yeah. Well, because you guys are first.
It's just that when you have the ability to control that, you should exercise it. Would be my point.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's expedient to use those standard elements.
Right.
Okay.
And also there's going to be a door on that exterior HVAC unit too, right?
Yeah.
And there's going to be a vent probably on the balcony side, right?
Yeah. It would be right here.
So we don't have to see the vent from the street side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So these plans are in pretty good shape, but they're going to require some, like really focused editing
Mm-hmm.
to make them work, because there's still lots of like plan gaps in them in terms of the content and information. So maybe rely on one another. Like Alec, if you're going to do that work, for instance, while Trevor does something else, like
Mhm.
maybe the renderings, then Trevor also, you need to budget time for Trevor to like copy edit your plans,
Right.
put some fresh eyes on it, right? And then he has to give you the same. He has to extend to you the same editing courtesy. He has to send you the renderings, and you talk about them with him. So that's how the team has to work.
Mm-hmm.
Can you go back to that plan here for a quick minute? I have a question for Professor Farlow.
Okay.
So Mark, I know you talked about the indent,
Yeah.
and I agree. It seems. I also would wonder how well that would work if you're handicapped.
Yeah. So that door is kind of in the wrong place.
Right. So my
Because I
question.
don't have that maneuvering dimension at the latch on that door.
Right. And so my question would be also, it's like, so there's like a 3-foot sort of like mini hallway there before you
Yeah.
hit the closet.
Yeah.
I would almost think to be honest with you, I've been in these sort of independent living seniors places, and many of them have like a 6x6 hall closet to store a lot of the things that those people do have. So I would suggest, if Professor Farlow agrees, it may make sense to just enlarge that whole sort of closet space.
Yeah. Maybe the door wall for that closet is actually the column line, Alec.
Right.
For this closet.
No.
We're talking about the
No,
entrance.
the
right
entry
now.
one behind the door at the entry.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That T shape, that L shape.
I almost suggest make that like 5 feet by 6 feet or something. Make it a big walk-in.
Yeah.
Let them have, because they're going to need. I think they're going to need more storage. To be honest with you.
Okay.
And maybe there are places where, like here, where you've got that column right in the hall and in the indent.
Right.
Maybe then that unit doesn't have the full length indent, the typical
it would.
8-foot indent. Because
Mhm.
right now you don't have the maneuvering dimension for ADA
Mhm.
at the entrance door. You
Right.
do on the inside at the pull side, but you
Mhm.
don't at the push side.
Right.
So that door actually has to slide north a skosh in order to accommodate that. And suddenly now the hinges are right in line with the column line. So that's going to be kind of a unusual moment. So you might want to simplify that.
Mhm.
That whole indent thing.
Yeah.
I think you have that ADA problem on the hallway door opposite too. If you pan left, see that door has to slide north too. I want to make sure by asking you, you understand what I'm saying about the maneuvering dimension at a doorway. If you look at John and Stefan's code stuff, the like ADA and the ANSI A117.1,
Mhm.
these have all doors in all like commercial spaces and the ground floor community spaces and back of house spaces need to have this dimension. The front doors to all of the units in type B units need to have this dimension, and all doors in A units need to have these clear dimensions, clear floor and maneuvering dimensions. But there are certain requirements that you have to be able to maneuver as a handicapper to open and lock or pull and close the door. And the code has like these diagrams if you're approaching frontally or parallel, or it lays out about 8 different scenarios. And one of the exercises that we go through is we just like print all of the drawings. Again, we go back to analog. We print the drawings and then we check them off. And often, you guys, when we're drawing in the digital mode, when we're working in Revit or when we're working in CAD, our door blocks, everyone, will have the clear floor area dashed line work as an integral, right, property of the block inserted, so that you can validate that the wall nearest that latch, for instance, is, adequately remote.
Okay. Yeah.
I get the sense that you're not clear about what I'm talking about, so I want you to make sure that you look at that. And Trevor, I want to make sure that you are as well. Both of you kind of have to be. I'm not saying that you have to be like, you don't have to have all those 8 or so door types memorized, but you will memorize them when you start working in an office. And all of these doors that we just described need to accommodate that. These front doors need to meet those dimensions.
Yeah, I see. I pulled up the diagram and I see where it misses.
Yeah. And by the way, you'll geek out on this stuff. Once you know it, you'll geek out on it. You'll look at someone else, like in a year, you'll look at Trevor's plan, when he's a grad student, you're going to say, dude, did you forget about what Farlow said? You got to have that clear floor area when you're approaching the door from this direction. And it's 24 inches when it's, like a parallel approach.
Yeah.
And then Trevor's going to go, oh crap. I thought I got all of these. Right. So you're going to look at every door in these layouts and test them to make sure they work.
Right.
You'll get to be a real nerd like me.
That's the goal.
Yes, that's the goal. We got to move on. Anything else, guys?
Nope.
Okay, thanks. Nerds are beautiful, right? So let me look at the sign-up list. I think Cody and Richard are next.
Yeah.
Okay, Richard, I got you on the screen.
Okay.
Did you wish Cody a happy birthday today, Richard?
Oh, it's today, isn't it?
Friend.
Yeah, partners.
That would be a
like
no.
Jerry Lewis and Dean Martin. They don't even know each other.
Okay.
We've both been really just in production mode.
Yep.
For a lot of our sheets. One thing I did want to ask a question about, I think Professor Farrow had sent this information to me before, but we still are rather unclear as to what kind of HVAC system that we can incorporate for our retail section in our building, as opposed to what we have set up with a vertical stack water source heat pump for the residential floors. Would you have any suggestions for me to pursue that question I have there?
What is the power source for you? Is it a VRV or VRF or what? You remember?
It's a central system with a chiller on the roof and a boiler in the mechanical room.
So assuming these are high efficiency boilers.
Yep.
And then you're going to have a conventional AC, right? So you're going to have there's going to be a compressor probably on the ground, possibly on the roof. You've got to have your AC condenser rather outside, right?
Is that why does that have to be independent of the chiller system we have set up for the water source vertical stack water source heat pumps?
I believe you have a condenser and do you have a condenser and a cooling tower, or what do you have?
We have a cooling tower on the roof. Am I saying that?
I believe you need to have the condenser with it.
Okay.
And the condenser comes first in sequence. On the roof is okay, except you have to access it and all of that. It's not a problem, but you have to access it. I would say, to be frank, you have the same system that you have for the rest of the building.
Yeah.
It's just going to have its own. I don't know, what is the control? Is it like a VAV box or something?
I'm not sure.
Okay, that's a fairly common approach, and then that also lets you have thermostat controls to the multiple tenants. Does that make sense?
Okay. Just writing it down.
Yeah, maybe after this too, we can exchange some emails and we can talk about it further. But I would suggest that you keep the same system that you have for the tenants. Okay.
Okay.
Just so that you have a single source, so to speak, providing it for the whole building.
Right.
It's probably got a VAV box that's going to feed the common spaces on that level. There's going to be thermostats in each of the units, or the let's say residential, etc. Sometimes I'm just going to let you know, sometimes even though you think you have complete control of the temperatures in your space and tenant spaces like that, the answer is you don't. So if you have, let's say, 3 tenants running off one VAV box, which could make sense here, what happens is that the thermostat settings for those 3 are averaged, and that's what you get in your tenant space.
Oh.
So we have this all the time. Office buildings are the same way with, let's say, private offices. So it kind of averages out. It doesn't necessarily give you the ability to control as much as you think.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Now, on the other side, since you're concerned about sustainability, right?
Yeah.
You have the ability to sort of put a master control over the system to establish certain set points, which means you might say, hey, I don't want it to get below this and I don't want it to be above that. So I don't know, where those set points are going to be. I think Professor Farlow knows that if residents can't have the comfort that they want, it'll be an issue for them. So
Right.
To give you a point of reference, last year we did a project at Arizona State University in Tempe, and they were their campus is very concerned about sustainability. They want to have, high energy conserving features. They want to have LEED silver buildings, right? So their set points were plus or minus 2 degrees, 68 to 78.
Oh,
So that would mean, you're working within a range like that, right? So if someone says, "Oh, I just want, I really need more heat, and I want to set it up to 85," right? The answer is it's not going that far. Does that make sense? So the set points, to get back to Nathaniel's point, the set points are actually the way that comfort zone, that, remember the psychometric chart, they had that blue box, that's how you get to extend that. And that's how you get to build energy savings, right?
right. I would imagine the rammed earth mass would help with that quite a bit. And
The rammed earth math is going to help on the cooling side because you're going to absorb a lot of internal gains.
right.
So that would be what I would think would help you. I mean, the other point I would suggest too is that in order to get anyone in Detroit probably wants to have, or probably should have, a dehumidification system built into your system, a dehumidifier. The reason for that is dehumidification is going to add to providing more cooling for you. And Detroit's a humid environment, so you probably have a dehumidifier desiccant component built into your system, just embedded in the ductwork.
Can that not be a component of the individual vertical stacked water source heat pump units?
I'd have to see what system you're choosing.
Okay, we can exchange some emails about that later then.
Okay. I assume you're going to have an ERV or an energy recovery ventilator too?
Yep.
Okay.
That's all I have to discuss.
That's fine. We can talk more on the email exchange.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Richard, do you have anything else?
No, just a little bit there, nothing to show you yet.
So one of the things I remember, Richard, when we were when I was preparing the summary, the feedback, the grade sheet feedback, was maybe some views of what your units actually look like inside.
Right.
So like I was saying to Trevor and to, pardon me, Alec, when you get those mapped out or even just sketched out, I'm happy to look at that just to kind of just validate them.
Right.
So, and you can send them to me anytime.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I don't have anything else for you two.
I did have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead. You have the floor.
With the water treatment on site with the living machine, the capacity that was able to hold per day it actually exceeded the building output, theoretical output, I guess, by a couple thousand gallons. How would that work where we could just, I guess, pitch the idea of treating water buildings nearby?
I don't know. I'm quite frankly surprised that would even meet your building, let alone exceed it. Can you send me some information on that and how you arrived at that?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And can you remind me exactly what's the byproduct of this process? What are you producing that's in excess?
Well, the capacity of the water treatment in the natural process of the living machine, we were limited to 12,000 gallons per day per the one tank that has to hold the water for over 24 hours for settlement.
Right.
And based off of one calculation for the output of washing machines being used 8 times on all 4 floors.
Yeah.
4 washing machines being used in one day.
Right.
Came out to like 1,200 gallons, which if I were to take that information and extend that to shower usage throughout the entire building, maximum amount. That still gives us almost 5,000 or 4,000 more gallons of water, potential water treatment at max usage.
I think Professor Farlow's question though maybe is it potable water or gray water?
Oh, at the end of the process, it's potable water.
So
My question would, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I would say, since you're talking about washing machine water being cleaned, correct?
Yes.
I would think you'd have to be careful about the soap people are using, correct?
I need to look into the chemistry more on that, but
Okay.
soap I don't think matters due to the process that we go through. So the first 3 tanks are intended to sort out the particular chemical compounds that can be found, sulfur compounds that can be found in a lot of the water discharge we have today.
Because I'm thinking if it's got to be like a biodegradable soap or something that has to run through this to purify it, and you can't guarantee that because someone's going to do whatever they want when
whatever they buy, they're going to use.
You want to bypass. You probably would want to bypass that part of this. You want to bypass those dishwasher or those washer discharges from your system. Does that make sense?
That does make sense, and that's an absolutely valid concern. I will double check the information on that.
But I'm wondering if you produce, you're producing, as I understand you, potable water that we would not need to draw from the city's water supply. So this building is producing by reusing water because the building is a living machine. So can this water be stored or shared on site? You remember, like you have this gig, you have this deal where you're striking with the neighbor that's maybe you're going to share like this garden space to the west, and your development's merging into their development. Maybe there's some sort of way that this can be used for on-site irrigation. Maybe it can be used for, maintenance, like cleaning cars or cleaning equipment or cleaning the building. Maybe it can be used for like janitors' closets or things like that, so that it continue to sort of feed its use in such a way that it makes just good sense and it makes good neighbors.
Yeah,
but without having to resort to like drinking it.
Well, I think you got the key point. I mean, if it is truly potable water you can get back, it would make the most sense to drink it.
Yeah.
But if it is not, then I think you're going to those so-called gray water sources as the alternate.
Yeah, but gray water in this case, I mean, I think you can find lots of places to, if you will, reuse that water on the premise and off-site, like adjacent to the site.
It's toilet washing and or toilet flushing and landscaping.
Yeah.
Right.
I will revisit both those points.
Okay. Yeah. Do you have a system in mind? Did you find a living machine example?
There are a couple. I can send you what we've been.
Yeah. Why don't let's take a look at that. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Good. Anything else, Cody? Richard?
No.
Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
So Nathan, I think Jess sent me a note. He's got to leave shortly. I'm not sure if he's still here. I think he had to sign off.
Yeah, it looks like he did.
I think he's gone.
Yeah, but he is going to revisit this when he gets back from his other appointment in about an hour or an hour and a half. So this may be shorter because he's not here, unless you have some questions that you're going to represent for him.
Sure. No, not for him. I don't have anything specific. We've been working pretty hard on trying to get the module 3 complete. I can kind of run through some of the work that I've been doing on that, if that's helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Let me grab this PDF. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm gonna skip through some of his stuff. So what I've started to do was categorize the solar panel cost versus solar investment tax credits.
All right.
I'm kind of going through the process. I found a commercial grade solar panel that provides the amount of kilowatts I want to do. The question is, it doesn't seem as expensive as I thought it would be. So I don't know if I'm doing something funny, or because 162 panels at $320 is only $51,000.
Well, I'll say the arguments I've heard recently, and Professor Means and I've had these discussions, is because they found less expensive manufacturers overseas, Pacific Rim companies, for example.
Sure.
That you're right, they are going down.
That's great, because my incentive 30%. You know, this is a very affordable option to provide some sustainability and then just distribute it throughout the building. So I as you can see on the chart on the right, I've started to calculate some of how many kilowatts we would provide versus how many we use. And then I've also gone into elaborating a little more on distributing throughout the Common Core. You had responded, Professor Faro, about the question of how do we distribute to our common halls.
Correct.
So as the building rises, we've got these common areas that shrink, and we've got little amenities per space. So I was looking at a VRF system just for the common areas, which we would have a location on the roof that would provide those areas that have both indoor fresh air exchanger plus return air within the same unit. So it wouldn't necessarily need to be the most high impact system, since we have so much additional assistance from the apartments themselves.
Yeah, most of these spaces are inboard. Only that meditation area, right?
Yeah.
That's the only one that's really going to have a loss. Is that an outdoor space or indoor? I'm sorry.
It's an indoor space that has kind of an outdoor exposed area if we wanted to.
I'm sorry, can you zoom in on it for a minute?
Sure.
How
That's
large
on the second floor, isn't it?
Yes.
is it? On every floor?
No, it's only
Okay.
on the second floor.
This is where that terracing condition begins, right?
So here's my point. I bet you the unit that needs to feed those common spaces, because they're so small and load, would not be that large.
Okay.
If you actually have an outdoor like terrace area, you might be able to park that on that floor.
Could I go back to that kind of hybrid system that the Daikin system specific to the floor?
I think so, because I don't think there's that much load. So
Yeah.
each one of your floors carries a smaller version of the unit that you're working with.
Okay.
And the advantage to this is you don't need any vertical runs. You understand? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
no, definitely.
It just runs horizontally and you're done.
Okay.
And then I guess the other attribute would be, okay, well, if one of these are out on the floor, I'm not sure, because there's so small a load on this space anyway, that you really close the building. I mean, these corridors basically are completely surrounded by conditioned spaces anyway, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's put out, right, if the system breaks. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, it's a very efficient system, especially with radiant flooring. You're kind of creating this contained zone that shares with your neighbors, even if you don't want to.
And I think that probably the radiant system that you have, the loop is just running through the corridor in the common space, right?
Yeah.
It's a separate loop from the main spaces.
Could it do that long a run? I've been trying to find how
You know,
far
that's
my limits are.
It's a good
I don't know.
point, but my answer to that is probably yes. It's just a question of how much your fan power capacity would be, I think. And also, they have these things, they call them booster fans. I've only used them once. They're basically like an inline fan inside the duct. And if you need to move the air further in the system, the booster fan does that for you.
Okay, great. Well, that simplifies a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think it could.
And then I've started to kind of look into how the parking garage, the axial jet fans that you sent with the
Okay.
modular free, that's the solution for our spacing.
Right,
So
and I
I
think
started
if you can have some openings in maybe your courtyard for vents,
Mhm.
maybe your garage door also has, I mean, it doesn't have to be solid. Remember, it can have metal grating or something on it. As long as it's
Mhm.
secure, that's another way you'll get the vents. Can I ask you to back up to your PV calculation for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, so can you tell me, did you do an online calculator?
Yes.
Which one did you use?
It was one of the early references before Benchmark 2.
Is it PV Watts?
I have it. I'm sorry?
Was it PV Watts?
It possibly was, yeah, where we put in the location, you determine your weather location.
Here's what you have to be careful with PV Watts. When you get into looking at what it does in the calculation, it assumes that there's a panel size of a certain area, right?
Right.
You just have to make sure that you're cognizant of that dimension in that area relative to the total amount of PV area that you have.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that went into. Now I didn't take in. So the John R. Apartments provide some shadows during the day. I didn't know how to calculate that into my numbers. So.
How much do you know? How much it's shaded?
You know, depending on the season, it's an hour's worth of sun, just based on the sun angle. Is there a way to quantify that?
I'm not sure. When I look at your roof in the drawing there, where are the can you point with your cursor? Where are the panels that'll be shaded?
About this window right here. So from about halfway on the southeast corner to about halfway on the northeast.
And that's only during what times of the year, like December or something?
It's mostly fall through spring where that sun touches a portion of my roof. Summertime, I don't get almost any exposure.
You know, I guess what you could do is if you could actually look at it and figure out what percentage of the year you're covered, and of the daylight hours that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you figured out, oh, I'm going to lose, I don't know, 10% of my panel area throughout the year, or 8%, then my back of the envelope calculation would be take that off your number.
Okay.
Is that your total?
Okay. Yeah.
It?
Great. So some additional pieces that I've started to elaborate a little more on duct locations, returns, how a typical apartment would run. And then I've also.
Can you go back to the apartment for a minute? Okay. So does this unit that we picked out, I don't remember which one, does it have its own ERV in it?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, each unit self-contained. It brings its own air in. It circulates it through the hydro box in my utility room of each unit, and then it distributes radiant floor heat plus ceiling diffusers. So it's catering more to the group, the patrons who will live in this building, be it that they're older, trying to provide warmer floors, which brings your temperature up. Right. I can elaborate a little bit more on that in the module 3.
If you can find out if there's a dehumidifier in the unit, if not, see if you can add it.
Okay, great.
I think you would want the dehumidification in this climate, and it would reduce your cooling load.
That's great. Yep.
Sometimes they're like add-ons to the components.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this Daikin system is really elaborate and really interesting to see. There's an apartment complex that just opened up in my town that they're the first in Indiana to ever use the Daikin system.
Okay.
So a friend of mine at work actually has used it, and I was talking to him about how efficient it is for apartment units.
Okay.
So it's been really interesting.
Okay.
So I've started to try and break down some of the plumbing axon, how to bring rainwater down into a store area, how to bring it back into the system, how to circulate it in kind of a generic term, plus try and show some sustainability. I brought that up in the last benchmark, and I'm just kind of elaborating a little more on it here on how that works. And then I'm showing just a typical layout in the same room. I have a 2-inch typical cold water line running through the building per floor. Everything stacks, so all of my units, water lines line up on top of each other. And then in some of the typical spaces, I've got a 1-inch hot water line. And then within the unit, I'm showing just a half.
Does the Daikin system provide the hot water for you, or do you have like an on-demand electric hot water heater
I think he has a hot water heater.
in the unit, and like an on-demand one?
I don't know if it's on demand, but I think I saw that in the other plan, right, Nathan?
You have a central hot water heater for the whole building?
No, the hydronic system actually has a high.
That's what I thought. They
Yeah,
have the capacity to run a hot water heater for you.
correct. So I've got a hot water unit next to my hydro box. So it's an all-in-one.
Right. So my question
system.
is, when you hit the typical unit floor, the only hot water component that's needed then would be your gym or your laundry, right?
Yes.
So I guess my question would be, rather than running the hot water line through the building,
Yeah.
just you don't have a central hot water heating system. You run it to the on-demand water, and then you just take care of it there.
Well, yeah, with changing my HVAC system, it actually helps my plumbing system too. This is trying to accommodate that previous system, but yeah, I'll update the gym, the meditation space, all that will get changed.
And then if you put that VRF system on the floor, like in the open area where the gym is, right?
Mm-hmm.
That system can also have the add-on for the hot water.
Yep.
Your unit does, then I would go that route.
Yeah, no, definitely.
You're done.
Yeah, with that suggestion, it kind of changes what you're seeing now.
Okay.
So I'll update all these plans. And then I've started to calculate the rainfall from my catchment area, and then trying to calculate how much rainwater I'll be able to store within the year in my 2 1,000-gallon storage tanks, and then try to distribute those back into hand washing and then hose bib water supply.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I've landed. We've done some wall sections. I haven't gotten them in this presentation yet. And then we've also got, I've been doing the U value calculator for my building, the window areas. And then I know Jess is working on the Athena version of his,
Right.
Athena.
You sent
So
me-
we're, okay.
Okay.
So that's where we're at right now.
Did Jess try to use Tally?
I believe he is right now. Yeah.
'Cause I think that would be a lot quicker than Athena.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Well,
I'll
because
double check.
Athena, you have to enter in all your quantities. That's the attraction for the interoperable software that Tally has. It, as long as you've inputted into your Revit model what something is made of, it extracts that. Does that make sense?
Yep. So I tried to download the Tally after last week's conversation with the Therm software. I was just trying to find an alternative.
Right.
And the Tally software, it's kind of finicky in Revit. I don't know if other people have had the same issue. It's weird where you try to I'm sorry.
I didn't speak.
Oh, okay. The software kind of runs funny where it won't let me tab through accepting the rules and then go into some of the other aspects of it. Now, I don't know if Jess has had the same issue or not. He's going to run those calculations. So maybe he's a little better.
Yeah, well, if it's an educational version, it might have a limited functionality.
Okay.
I've had those issues as well, Nathan. I was trying, and as soon as I try to open Tally, it just goes on the kind of load mode, and it doesn't do anything. So I don't know if I downloaded the student version. I don't think I did, but I'm having the same issues as well.
You have the right version of Revit to work with. Make sure it's it's set up for the right version you have.
Okay.
That would be one. I don't know, Nate. Did you validate that?
I'm running the most current version of Revit. I hope it's up to date because Revit's not backwards compatible.
I know we've had issues with that in the past. Some students
Okay.
had different versions of Revit, and some got it to work, others did not, and then we had to fix that.
Okay. Well, I'll meet with Jess and kind of figure out where we're at with that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
Just to make
and
sure.
then send me some emails when you get further along.
Okay. Great. Yeah, so once we get past module 3, we're going to start running with our final renderings, final products. Jess and I have been talking about trying to split up the renderings so that we can have fun.
Cool.
On
That's a good
that
strategy.
stuff. So I think Jess is going to do more of the interior rendering, so the courtyard, some of the terrace views. I'm going to do more of the site-related views. We use different software, so we're going to try and complement each other.
What do you like to use, Nathan?
I prefer V-Ray and SketchUp.
Mhm.
I've had a lot of success with that, and I know Jess wants to get into Luminaire. He's been using Rhino, and so since he's got Lumion, sorry. Yeah, Lumion. Since he's got that as an option, he's wanting to play with it, which I've seen the renderings. They're great. So absolutely.
Yeah. We use it at work actually. So excellent. I can't wait to see him.
Yeah. Nope. We're trucking along.
Okay. Keep on trucking. All right. Anything else?
That's all I got.
All right. Well, if Jess comes back and he has more questions, just have him shoot them to, both of us or one of us, and we'll reply as soon as we can.
Sure. That'd be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you later.
Thanks.
Caitlin and Casey are next. We're a little bit early for you two. Is that going to be a problem? Casey and Caitlin?
As long as she's here.
No.
Good. So who wants to talk first? Turn your cameras on. Good.
I can show you like the sort of updates that I did. Okay. Oh, I should probably screen share. So first thing I did was rework this. I don't know if I showed it to you last week.
No, this is the first time I've seen this drawing.
I just after benchmark 2, you talked about cleaning it up and
Yep.
making.
Yep, I can see that the middle row is moved up. You've softened the radiuses on the two spaces. Like it looks like 41 and 42 or something like that. Looks like all the paint stripes, right? Capture columns and no fly zones, no drive zones. That's good. The one thing that I still think you have an option for that you maybe haven't indicated is in the dead zone between
30.
29 and 30. That can be a storage area that leads to a storage area underneath the ramp. Yes.
Yeah. I'm just writing.
So, yeah. So I just like if you have program spaces that you still need more room for, those are still sensible areas.
I don't think that we do.
Just do a double check. What I like to do is just draw a little circle or a bubble around that area as a placeholder. Then as you're moving through the package, right? You go, oh, what was that for? Oh yeah, storage, right? So that's maybe another.
So I was
How
just
many
looking,
spaces do you get down here? Are you close?
we are at
48?
48. Yeah. But I was just looking at the ventilation fans, and it didn't really tell me how much space they take up.
Well, that space that you just circled where the paint stripes are, that's more than enough room compared to what we did for at least exhausting things vertically to the grade condition.
Yeah, I have this room over here that
Yep, I see that now.
connected to the exhaust or like the HVAC vertical stacks, it lines up with those for all the other floors, and I would have that exhaust on the alley. I don't know if that is enough. I would assume probably not. So I was just looking into the fans, and maybe they could go in these kind of dead corners, but like they would, I don't know where, like where would they blow towards? Like,
well, that's why if they're on the alley, you guys, then they blow out to the alley, right? They're not going to disrupt life on the street, you know, passersby on the sidewalk, or interrupt the facade there. So, you know, when those things come up from below and then penetrate through a facade, right, which is objectionable in most cases, the mitigating factor is that they're on an alley, and we expect that kind of, you know, opening, that louvered opening there, for example.
okay. And then I started like an elevation, because you said you hadn't.
I think this plan has really come a long way. And what I love about its evolution is it's just gotten really simple.
Yeah.
It's a damn shame you can't get those 2 more spaces down below.
I don't have any space. I don't know.
What percentage do you have as compacts?
There's only one compact space.
Well, and what's the dimension?
I've heard that communities allow anywhere from 10 to 40% to be compact today, depending upon their municipal code.
So this is two-way traffic, correct?
I'm doing it as one way, where you would.
So where you got that 24 foot 2 1/8 or whatever?
Yeah, I agree.
I think you can put those 2 cars there. You can reduce that down to maybe 18 feet and still get a nice soft radius and still get 2 cars there.
Yeah, what if you parallel parked along it?
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I can.
Mark?
Yeah, I mean that's another option, but I think he actually can do 2 spaces there.
Like here and here or something, or
well, just you would have less paint there. You'd have a space below 41 and a space below 42.
He's got columns there.
Oh, he does. I guess I see those now.
That's why I'm suggesting maybe could you parallel park one behind the other in that space.
I mean, I could try
2 stalls up above with at least a 5-foot walk between them. I don't know why you couldn't parallel park right.
So the paint could run up to the column line or up to the column face, right? And then so from that south face of the column, if you went down 9 feet, that's your parking space. So what do you have left over there?
16.
That's enough for one way. And they would be compact spaces, so maybe they would not be 9 feet.
They're only 8.5.
Yeah, so they're a little bit shallower, and maybe they're a little bit shorter.
You could put one behind the other,
yep.
And you've got 2 cars there, and you're done.
Okay.
And then on the other side, excuse me, Professor Farlow, if he would agree, sorry, could you scroll down to 26, 27?
26.
The ones on the bottom. Could those also be some compact stalls, meaning they're not as long? Like 27, 26, 25. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that widens out his drive aisle.
Well,
yeah, he's still got columns there, though. But yeah, you could mug some of that 24 feet into that as well, given that you've got so much paint around them.
Okay. Okay.
What's the distance between the column face at 31 and the column space at 30?
Right. What's that?
There and there.
It's 25 and a half.
So what if you divided that into 3? What is that?
Do I get 8/6 out of it?
Here, let me break out the calculator.
Yeah, you get 8.5.
Then I think that try that at 3 compact spaces.
That could be 3 compact spaces. Then you'd only need 1
And the other side,
and at the T there, right?
giving you more clearance.
Yeah. Okay.
You see what I mean? So
Yep.
like thinking about it, you know, again, game of inches, right? Just like football. It's really like you have to be
Mark,
aggressive. Yeah.
before you get off that, do the same thing at 22 and 23 on the right.
Yeah. So you could get another space there, and you wouldn't
Well,
even
and then
need.
if you just had to get 2 cars, you're done.
Yeah, you wouldn't even need to do anything at the T, Casey.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't.
Yeah, I like that.
And it cleans it all up.
Mhm.
All the same.
30 and 22. 23. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't even look over there, Dan. That's a good catch. So, like, even though this is like nearly perfect from where you were, it's still we can still like pick nits,
Yep.
which is a good thing. Okay, I'm sorry, we interrupted you. You can go to the 3D stuff.
No, I just did. I started an elevation. I haven't added like the ground level entourage and stuff, but
So, what are these materials?
so the brown facades are like the tactile fiber,
Like a panelized system,
Yeah.
right?
and then I used metal panels for the gray areas.
Mm-hmm. Did you have so one thing I'm seeing is shadows. So are these projecting in and out, or are they
This is
laying over each other like siding, or what?
this is
looks like they're laying over one another. Yeah,
this facade.
yeah. So there's kind of a terracing that happens there. So there's a natural shadow line.
Mm-hmm.
And then, did you look at perhaps orienting the metal panel in a different direction to see what that looked like?
I didn't, but I definitely can.
And then just to sort of pick nits, the horizontal lines that constitute the head of the windows and doors and the sills of the same should also be the line work or the joint locations for the tactile panels, guys.
Okay.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's not like a
So
little.
there's kind of a registration that occurs.
Okay.
So that you're having to cut fewer of the panels, and you're using the sort of prevailing, if you will, construction lines of the building as the delineator of material joints. And the same would be true, guys, right? For like if you did the horizontal metal panel option, those would start to line up too. If there were like horizontal seams at like every floor or whatever, you'd want those to register. And the same for the curtain wall, that large opening on the south end. Like those horizontal mullions want to sort of extend that logic. So heads and sills of the windows would also create the line work, right, for that condition.
So like this would line up with
Yes,
this.
sir. Yes, sir. Well, the curtain wall would line up with the punched openings,
Yeah. Okay.
right? And the punched openings determine the joints, right, for not only the horizontal guys but also the verticals. I'm looking at, if you zoom in, you'll sort of bear this out, but the verticals need to line up too. See, move your cursor to the panel right there. No, up to the corner. There. That panel is got cuts all over the place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But how much simpler it would be if if that panel was only from the head of the window that you're pointing near to the sill of the window above, right? Yeah. So thinking about, you know, these things in a logical way helps also inform your building section. Capiche?
Yep.
Can you do me a favor and send me a PDF of that elevation and the corresponding floor plan?
Okay.
I might have a quick suggestion I'd like you to run through, Professor Farlow.
Cool.
Okay. I'm also a bit concerned that when I look at the elevation on the grade level with the retail, I don't even see what looks like a perimeter girder there. It's like it's all storefront.
So is that mullion that's running like at 10 feet there? Is that a spandrel above it? Is that?
Oh, okay. So
It would have to be, I think.
Do you see why we're asking that question?
Yeah.
It looks like there's no perimeter girder or spandrel on the end.
So the as soon as it loads, that is this panel right here. The ground floor isn't like, it's not flat.
Is that in progress, or you think you're done with it?
With that panel,
Yeah.
I mean, I can definitely.
I think
It just looks like there's no spandrel beam there at all. It looks like it's all glass. That's why I'm asking.
You know, okay, I think
You know what I'm saying?
You have a section through there?
it goes right up to the I think I understand.
Yeah. I mean, you see there's floor thickness in all the spaces above, right?
Yeah,
Unless that's a dark back painted spandrel panel there, that top 2 feet, then the spandrel is sort of lost.
Have you guys cut a section through here yet?
Yeah.
Caitlin?
Could you show us a section?
Because when we talked really the day of the crit, Caitlin, we talked about like doing this wall section for the whole height of the building, and I haven't seen anything since then yet. So I want to see if we're getting anywhere on that with you, because I think some of these questions are going to be answered in this.
Okay.
Can you zoom in a little bit? I'm interested in the condition between level 1 and 2.
That definitely needs to.
So the beam is beyond, and
The cantilever or overhang.
Now
I see it.
Yeah, I think actually, Caitlin, that glazing panel, that vertical window, has to like sit underneath that cantilever.
We have a water infiltration problem.
You understand what I'm saying? That's like a straw. That plane is like a linear straw, like a gutter. So you want that panel to move in 4.5 inches or whatever, right? The thickness of that window system is, and you want it to drop down a little bit so it slips under the cantilever, under the concrete.
Okay.
And
the concrete overhang portion has got to be above the storefront.
Yeah. Okay.
Water can't get into the storefront. I mean, I would say if push comes to shove and it really had to be that way, it's not that you can't do it, but we'd have to take a look at how that's flashed and drained. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Can you zoom? Can you walk us upstairs? Just go vertically.
This I was fixing in my other ones, still working it out.
And then I was gonna transfer it all over into the full one. But
So remind me, you guys are doing a concrete frame? Oh, like metal pan, like concrete in a metal pan on structural steel, on structural red iron?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's some line work here that's a little quirky. These sections suggest, Caitlin, that because of the thick line, right? They suggest that you're cutting through the balcony, right? Which may be the case, but I'm actually not clear because.
Can you scroll down a little bit?
Yeah, if you're actually cutting through the wall, then you would show the insulation as running vertically the way you are. So like, I'm not. Are we looking at that railing and the balcony beyond as a beyond condition, or is it cut through it?
I believe it was cut through the balcony.
So then the floor, then the wall has to stop.
Can't be supported that way, I don't think.
Let me double check.
It's like you disconnected the balcony cantilever.
It did not cut through the balcony side.
So you're really looking at the balcony beyond, and so the floor slab there would not get hatched. It would not get the stipple, and the line work would get thinner. Yes, ma'am.
Right, like that.
Yeah. So you see now that looks. Do you see how that now looks like it's beyond?
Yeah.
And that dark line that right where you're at, the dark line there, where the insulation is, goes all the way up to the dark line above it.
Yeah, so it's continuous.
Yeah, like that.
And then what I like to do, Caitlin, is yeah, good catch. So what I like to do, if you move your cursor to the left a little bit more, no, not that far. So the other dark line that is, yeah, that line should actually follow around the sill and then run up along the window.
Okay.
So that, because it looks like you're cutting through a thick wall. Are you cutting through a thick wall there?
No, this is the window. So
that's the window. So that has to, like, be an hourglass, right? It needs, yeah. So just leave it like that for right now, and you can go back and mend that and tweak it. But that's the way that should, generally speaking, appear. And then what are you doing with the steel? Are you boxing out all the steel and suspending a ceiling to conceal all of the corrugated metal?
Yeah.
Okay, so then that box out needs to be indicated too, with a thick line, not the way it's shown. Capiche?
Yeah. Let me write that down.
Can I ask another question? There looks like there's a small section of wall behind the insulation.
That's the stud, I suppose, right?
Yeah.
But why is there not insulation in it?
In here?
Yes.
Is this cut through the metal panel?
Yeah.
Is the metal panel insulated?
There's the insulation, and then
I think it's the backup stud, like you said, and there's no reason why it can't be insulated that I know of.
Okay, I thought the insulation had to go in front, not for the whole thing.
Well, it's not a rule. It's just that there's I think it's something that, and I'd really like to have Dan talk through this more sort of clearly, just sort of the arc of insulation. If you tell the story, right, the history of insulation, when we started insulating buildings, we insulated in the stud cavity. And we insulated with like anything that we could until we sort of made sort of man-made products like bat insulation, right? And we stuffed those cavities with bat insulation to achieve insulative value and resistance to the temperature swings. But within the last 20 years, we started to introduce like extruded polystyrene insulation outboard of the wall, like you're suggesting here, because of where we found the dew point, is that moment in the wall where moisture condensates and it has to find its way out, right? So that insulation is shown graphically a little differently than what you've shown it. What you're showing is kind of like a compressed bad insulation. And so I'm not clear what you're trying to show.
And I would also suggest that I sent you folks I sent you some lectures, right? On exterior envelopes and walls, right?
Yes.
I mean, there's no easy answer here. You're going to have to sit down and look through them, okay?
Yeah.
Just take time to look through them because you have to understand the benefits of them and what their content is. And I think when you get a chance to look through some of them, you're going to see how that detailing will be different. Also, can you slide to the left and pull out a little bit? So then also the question is, what happens to that beam, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think at some point
you have not encased this yet.
Right. There's going to be a lateral studs, Caitlin, that are kind of like attached to the underside, the underflange, and then they're going to run up vertically to box that in. Or maybe, I don't know what your ceiling height in that room is. Do you have a sense yet? Are they like 9-foot ceilings?
Yeah.
So let's do an offset, or give me a line that's 9 feet from the finished floor. Or from the floor slab.
And actually, that large box out soffit condition up on the top, that could be a line where if you need to run some duct work, you use it for that.
Sure.
And then you don't have to compromise the ceiling height.
So where's your 9 feet? It doesn't seem like it's showing up. Can you just offset it 9 feet?
That's what I was. There we go.
So that means that you might have a little bit of a drop soffit there where your cursor is, and then it would resume to be 9 feet beyond that, assuming all the beams in the building are that depth, or all the beams that kind of move through those units, those residential units, are that depth.
And again, that could be a point for air supply because it's going to help to make up for the losses by the window. And then that keeps the duct out of the other portions of the space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that gets back to the point we made last time about how can you consider the HVAC duct placement a way that creates something in space rather than compromise the ceiling height, right?
So, Caitlin, typically when I've looked at walls that are like this and floor decks that are like this, I have done 2x6 metal stud walls. I'm cognizant of thermal conductivity. I've done a 5/8 inch sheathing on the outside face of that stud, right? That's going to be something like a gypsum type product that we might understand as like DENS glass, DENS glass. It's when you drive by a job site, maybe even over at the campus, you might have seen a yellow board up on the building as the volume was taking shape.
Yep.
And then you can do like Dow Cavity Mate Ultra, which is a black, has the property of the insulation panel is like a charcoal gray with printing on it. It's usually like 2 1/8 inches thick. It's in 4x8 sheets, and they veneer it right onto that sheathing, generally speaking. And then the cleats for the metal studs, I'm sorry, the cleats, the metal cleats that then receive the metal panels are attached to that, right? So that's kind of what's in that deli sandwich, if you think about it. And that also allows you, if you're not hitting your U values in that wall as described, that allows you to come back in and insulate the stud cavity, right, to build up that resistance, right, in that wall. But I say all of this not to bum you out based on what I'm looking at, but it looks like you've got 2x4 walls. B, I'm not sure I'm seeing the sheathing, and also, I think those studs, the stud wall needs to be out a little bit more, Caitlin, and sitting over the window, right? So that the window, if you will, has a stud to sit on and bite, right? And below at the sill and bite above at the
needs to be boxed out.
Yeah, you understand what I'm saying? That window needs to sit in a frame, a wall frame that is studs.
Right. It's got a head and it has a base. And
yeah, and then the insulation is outboard of all of that. You follow?
Yes.
I'll sketch something and share it with you. All right. But I think that the stuff that Professor Farrow sent on over the weekend and yesterday well, we're getting some weather here. We'll sort of clear that up.
Yeah, that was the sound that you heard on my end a few minutes ago.
Now the window could sit back in. Here's another thing. So the window could, well, first of all, I think you need 2x6 walls. All of you guys do, because that's just going to hide and the insulation. It's going to give you enough room to put outlets, convenience outlets, right? It's going to give these, because you guys are all doing bigger windows. It's going to give these big windows something, muscular to sit on and attach to, right? So that's one thing. But like in your case, its illustration, that window is kind of sitting flush, if you will, right, with the wall. And the reading from the street of your building is that it's going to appear kind of flat. When that window sets back even another 2 or 3 inches from where it is now, if you push it in board a little bit, you're going to get a little shadow around that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where that's kind of where we're going. So we're talking about this wall section aesthetically. We're talking about it performatively, and we're just talking about creating a continuous insulation opportunity.
Oh, okay.
I'll sketch something and send it to you.
Thank you.
And I think if you look at some of the lectures that I sent, the one that's wood frame infiltration presentation, air infiltration at transitions, even though they may show you a wood stud,
Mm-hmm.
it works the same for a metal stud.
Yeah, it can be metal.
It just has a, it doesn't, rather than seeing the wood block, you're just going to see, let's say at the base of the window, you're just going to see an upside down C, right? And then on the other side, it's an upright C, so to speak. But those lectures show you some of the details we're talking about.
Okay.
Have you ever drawn one of these before, Caitlin?
Yeah, in CS2, but that was a very long time ago.
And it was it commercial or residential?
That was commercial, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to say. Yeah, it was an office building.
So I'll just let you guys know this. When you're working in an office, if you were working with us, and with all due respect to your colossal talent and experiences, we probably wouldn't give you, Caitlin, this task, right? We'd let you evolve and grow and mature into a task like this. You might correct something that maybe Caitlin in my office would have marked up for you, or Alicia might have marked up for you and mended the drawing and made it better. But I don't know that we would entrust you to do one of these wall sections just yet.
Not at this level.
Yeah, because they're really tough. But this is also why we're having you do them in CS2 and why we're having you do them now, right? Because we want you to have a general sort of awareness of all of the kinds of drawings that we have to produce as architects in an office, and the ways that we approach them.
And when you have a meeting with the envelope expert at the firm, you know what he or she's talking about. Mm-hmm. So if you look at that lecture I sent you, the wood frame air infiltration, you're going to notice around slide 44, 45, there's a series of barriers: vapor barrier, air barrier, moisture shedding surface. Those are the 4 barriers I want you to show in those wall sections and in your details. and they are becoming more and more important. I think the newer codes are actually telling you have to show them in drawings.
Yeah, and there's line work for it, and you
That's
got to
right.
have a leader to it, and you have to point it out.
Right.
And
And
it also has to be in your wall types, and it has to be in your wall calculations, like when you submit a comp check.
Right, and when you go to that interview and you pull that drawing out, and somebody on the technical side looks at it, you know, they know you've been prepared.
Right. So you guys, I want you really to look at that material, and I'll look at the sketch that you're going to get in a second, and it'll just be a cartoon sketch. But also feel free to engage us, right? Don't, you know, these are tough drawings, so I want you to know that we recognize that. So you need to rely on your faculty, right, to help you through this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one more thing. Can you move up a little bit? No, I guess go down the other way. Yeah. Okay. So let's assume, Caitlin and Casey, that this is actually cut through the balcony, right? That wall and window is actually beyond, and the balcony looks like it's a little deeper than that. First of all, that railing would stick out to the end of the balcony, right? You wouldn't have that little ledge. Second of all, that corrugated metal, right, is going to be under. So the corrugated metal that's holding up or collecting all of that concrete when they pour it is going to be shown. And you're probably going to need a perimeter beam on all three sides of that balcony. You could do like kind of like a half beam or like an MC channel, right? Which is kind of like a beam cut in half, so that the exterior sort of appearance or expression of that balcony is actually like a channel.
It's not a thin slab, in other words.
Yes, and then that soft. There's going to need to be some sort of soffit underneath that corrugated metal, because that'll look, you know, crappy. You know what I mean? And you're going to need to protect that anyways. Right. So doing a channel that's a little deeper, like twice as deep as the slab is thick, will help conceal all of that. And I'll sketch my section actually through that condition.
And if you don't wrap it and include insulation around it, then it's definitely a thermal break.
Yeah, then it brings all that cold into the space, Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a thermal bridge that we don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Which, if we did the therm model, you'd see what's happening.
You can tell that we geek out on this stuff, Caitlin, right?
Somebody's got to do it.
Okay.
No, I look at it the other way, you know, kind of overstating maybe what Professor Farlow's talked about. You know, you have a unique situation, I think, in this career. I mean, you do things that very few people will do. You know, you're going to build buildings that will last for, 50 to 100 years. You're going to use the world's resources to do it. And you've got to convince and understand what it means to be proficient and capable and competent to do that. It's not an easy task. You know, people, as I said, you go to all the major firms, there are envelope experts.
Yep.
Right? I mean, that's what they know and that's what they do.
Yep.
It is not an easy task.
So we share your misery. And then when you watch Larry Scarpa's lecture, or if you did attend it, you'll remember that his remark that kind of unsettled me a lot. But I think sadly he's right. Is that buildings today, even when you have geeky Caitlin and geeky Casey designing them and detailing them, won't last 50 years. They'll last 30 years. As Larry Scarpa said, buildings only last for the sort of the mortgage cycle that a building will be under, which was kind of like, oh gosh, I think he may be right on that point. But those 30 years they're important years, because there's been a lot of capital invested in them, and we have to sort of fight for that design, which is another, I think, aspect of his talk.
But I do think architects are being more concerned about durability today.
Yep.
And building in longer term
value, right?
Products.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
he's right in a sense. You can go through even places in Michigan, suburban areas, where you see buildings that were built in the 60s and they've been completely reclad.
Yeah.
A lot of the
Because-
old curtain wall buildings have
Yeah,
just
because they have almost had to.
right. And then there's the the contrast to that are the precast buildings or the concrete buildings like Buell Building on campus, right? Built in what, 74 and 75,
Yep.
hasn't been touched. So, and I think that's also why we're starting to see more of these products like the cement boards, which are color fast. They don't have the shrinkage and swelling, right? So they don't go through as much deterioration as some of the prior wood panels that we would have seen.
Okay. So are you guys done? Do you have anything else, Casey or Caitlin?
I think
I
so.
have some questions.
I was working on the panel layout as well as Casey, so you just saw his.
Okay. Okay.
I think
Um,
beyond that, I'll probably be sending.
I'm happy to look at that either now or in a separate sketch.
Yeah, I can show you real quick. It was just a quick like rendering. Let me see.
That's a nice drawing.
Yeah, just figuring out the.
Can you zoom in?
But are these different colors of the panel or something?
Yeah, it was the different material. So the blue was one, and then the light gray was another. The dark gray is still needed to be like, I guess, paneled in, or however.
What paneled in? What does that mean?
Basically, for me to get the panel layout.
It's not covered yet.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, so Caitlin, one thing that seems to be working. Oh, so can you zoom in even more, like where it gets to be light blue and gray, where you've got the panels delineated?
Yes.
On the left side. Move a little bit to move the other way, 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 left.
If I can. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, like, you have the panels running vertically in more or less the appropriate way, right? They line up with the window and door jambs, right? That's good. But the heads of the windows should line up with the horizontal joints, and they do in a couple of places, but not in all of them.
They're scattered throughout, you know.
Yeah. So instead of keeping like all the panels like an equidistant, right, all the way up the building, you should have a variety of them, or make the, you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Because in reality, the balcony breaks them up anyway.
Right. Also, I think all of the windows and doors should be the same head height. They shouldn't like jump up and down. I don't know what's going on. I think the patio doors look a little smaller than everything else.
Yeah,
So do you see to the left of the light blue one? There's that window where the head and the wood panel line almost align, or panel line almost aligns.
Yeah.
That should be. I would almost work from that point forward, because that's where the panel joint and the window align. And then you're not going to have this up and down movement all the time.
Yeah.
Also, are you doing this based on a panel size? What is the panel size?
Yeah, the panel size I had been working off of, because I was trying to use the most of the material, was what was it? 3 by 7.
Do they make different size panels?
Yeah, the panels come in the minimum panel size, I believe, or typical is 4 by 10.
So one of the reasons I'd like you to do that enlarged elevation study, and Professor Farlow, I think, agrees, is
Yeah.
that you can sit down and make a decision about what size panels you want based on the issues we're talking about right now.
Bingo.
I was actually working on that too in Revit. I had the different size panels set up so I could switch.
Right. But I think if you do that blow up enlarged elevation, that's the scale to examine. It would be my
Yeah.
suggestion. And if you're working in an office, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And then Caitlin, just to make your head spin a little bit, then I'll say to you one day, okay, Caitlin, we need to go through and reduce all the windows, in size by 4%. So can you do a new elevation of the whole building that shows us that, and then catches all of the joints and the panels up to that move, right? Up to that edit. And you're going to go, oh, wow.
What I would say to you is the reason we gave you an ASHRAE percentage glazing to begin with is to get you preferably in a ballpark that we know the envelope will perform better.
Right.
So that you didn't, we wouldn't ask you to go back and take 4 or 5% off later.
Right.
You kind of benchmarked yourself with a good
right
percent glazing value to start with. But what I would say to you is, once again, I'd like to find a handrail or a guardrail situation that maybe is related to the panels or the cladding and doesn't look like it's the stick-on, standard balcony element, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's formed out of it's formed together and integral with the rest of the enclosure, which I know it can be, right? That makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
These are the finer, I know these seem like they're kind of fine points and they're making things complicated, but these are, as Professor Farlow would say, these are the differences between, well-executed architecture and that's not.
Right. And you'll find actually in buildings where budgets are really pushing down on, like a boot on your neck, right? Where you're having trouble breathing and it actually starts to hurt. You're going to find that you can only bring design to certain things. And so one of the ways that you end up doing that is you find core projects. And we talked about this really early on this semester, core projects in the project, right? Beth Whitaker talks about this, where actually, because there's so many of these darn balconies and because they're so kind of big on the balcony itself, relational to like the size of the unit, that maybe this is where you can do that. Right? Maybe the balcony is where you flex some design muscle, right? Like in the talk with Larry Scarpa the other day, he had a school that he had designed where the south facade, right, on the street is nothing but like 3 stories of photovoltaic curtain wall, and he said his story was, you can imagine this, Caitlin. Story was the contractor said, "Oh, gee, I think I can find a way to do this cheaper. We can do this wall less cheap if we do, fiber cement reinforced concrete panels, right?" Mm-hmm. And the owner said, "Oh gosh," the owner got all like hot and bothered and says, "Yeah, let's do this." So they did the test fit on that change, and indeed the curtain wall itself was a lot cheaper. But they also discovered, as you can predict, that the cost of energy for the building started to skyrocket because now the building wasn't like thriving and breathing on these photovoltaics because they took them out of the budget. So the long story short is they restored the photovoltaics curtain wall because it drove down the cost of operating the building. And that was kind of that was the core project within the project. Great little anecdote. Mm-hmm. Finding ways to bring value to the conversation in terms of the materials that you specify so that it's really difficult to take them away.
I think that's the key point, that when you start to embed some of those characteristics in the building and you can't take them away, that's where I think a number of architects have struggled over the years with how they gain control back, and they don't find that the value engineering people just have free reign.
Okay. Do we have anything else to go over, Caitlin and Casey?
That was it for me.
I
Okay.
just have some questions.
Go ahead.
Well, for one, I want to kind of like dive into this. I'm like, where's my sheet? The study model. Should it be like what our building is actually going to look like, or like
So
like,
I don't
when you
know. So this is a question about the option, and it's a model on the base so that you can photograph it and integrate it right into your slide deck.
Okay.
Like the larger the model in terms of scale, I don't want to say that any sort of more delicately than this, but the more detail, right, it needs to convey, right? Like when you showed us those elevations today, you had thicknesses around those windows, you had double lines for joints, right? Because, right, a joint is really two parallel lines. But at a scale far away, it kind of reads as only one line, right? So the larger the scale of the drawing, and the model scale was not legislated, right? It was not mandated. But the larger the scale of it, the more realistic or the more information, the more architectural content you have to sort of display. So the model was really meant to be maybe, in my mind, like 3 feet by 3 feet, 2 feet by 2 feet minimum. But I don't know how much of the site you want to show to contextualize it. I don't know how much of the context you want to build. But I think the building is going to be, you know, probably about this big.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe a little bit bigger. So 1/16 of an inch equals 1 foot. Maybe 1 inch equals 20 feet. I don't know. But if it can show windows and door openings, or show it not necessarily as a cut thing, but as a graphic indication, that would be another way to show some more like fine grain on it.
Okay. Yeah.
But let's talk about that. You know, when you're ready to, if you're going to go that way, let's talk about what your proposal is.
Well, I just wanted to know if, like, because I know in past classes, like, study models, when they refer to it as a study model, it's more of like a conceptual thing.
Yeah, I don't think I used that word. Did I? Did I say study model?
Yeah, it does say
Okay.
it. But like a finished model, like,
yeah.
Well,
it is a finished model. A study model, I typically understand that as an in-process model, right?
Okay.
And you guys haven't made you haven't made like all the decisions that need to be made in a project like this. Ultimately, the motive, though, and since you like making models, and I appreciate that, ultimately, I think the model is to show you and your sort of interviewers that you have this skill set, that you're capable, competent designers, and that this is one way to convey the design intent, the design ideas, in ways that maybe the drawings can't, right?
Okay. And then,
but you're a model maker, so I'll work with you, Casey, on how that should go. Okay.
Okay. And then I talked to Dustin, and he said that as long as the building has walls, windows, doors, ceilings, and roofs, you should be able to do an energy modeling thing, analysis. So this was like the initial run, but I haven't ran the solar one yet. I believe I did for his class, but I don't remember.
But that was probably for another building.
Well, for his class, whenever he says build a model shape, I've just essentially been using this class shape so that I get an idea.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, brilliant.
I figured if he told us, you know,
make getting more value, right?
But this was the energy analysis.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about 0 people. Because that makes me wonder how are internal gains being assessed?
I don't.
Yeah, where is that coming from? Is that
You need to probably talk with him about that. Okay.
I didn't see that in the options as like a.
I know that, but that would affect your internal gains significantly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Maybe there's a way to address that. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to do it now. I'm suggesting maybe you clip that and send that over to Dustin and say, hey, we need to figure out how internal gains are going to be measured. How do we change the population?
Okay. Yeah.
Did you pick a building type when you selected this? Rob?
Yeah. So I chose multi-family.
Chose residential.
Like residential wasn't. I chose multifamily.
Oh, okay, that's fine. That's why I'm trying to wonder why doesn't it have a population in it?
Oh, I don't think I did this one. The operating schedule that might have a.
Yeah. Okay. 24/7. There you go.
Yeah, that might be one of the issues.
All right. Well, certainly he's the person to help you kind of debug those issues, right?
Okay.
That would be my suggestion now. But I'm glad you're working on it.
Yeah, I can talk with him Thursday, I guess. I wonder if I can.
Are you in this? I assume you're in this class too, right?
Yeah, I have this class on Fridays.
So you can always.
But I
change on that level, right?
I can. Are you gonna tell us where he will be on campus?
We already know.
Yeah, Professor Farrow's reserved a room for us.
Okay, I can just talk to him after his.
I believe it's. I thought I sent it out. I'm sorry. I believe it's T310.
Okay.
Mr. Farlow can see the email to confirm.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'll just plan on talking to him about it on Thursday after his lecture.
Cool.
Sometimes it's not a bad idea to kind of give him a heads up before he meets you.
Mm-hmm.
So he knows what the issue is.
Yeah, I'll send him an email.
Just 2 questions?
Yeah, that was it.
It's easy. Okay, good. All right. So, Dan, we can take a break and move into maybe conversation or questions that you want to pose, or we've gone through 4 sort of teams tonight, and I've scheduled 3 for Thursday night after Dustin's lecture, so what's your pleasure?
I would say I would take questions related to some of the lab issues.
Great.
If we would need to today, for those that felt they haven't addressed something or they need to address it, and then if not, then the reason I'm kind of logging on with you is so that we kind of work together with the.
Absolutely.
So,
we tag team it. Yep, I like that, and I know they do.
It gives us more continuity, maybe better use of our time.
Mm-hmm.
So we take a break and come back.
Perfect. I'll see you back here in 7 minutes.
Okay.
Hey, Caitlin and Casey, are you there still?
Yeah.
Could you screen share, please, your section again
Yeah.
with me so that I can look at it while I'm resketching it? Thank you. That scale's fine. So I'll do this while we settle back in.
Thank you.
So Casey and Caitlin, did you see that?
Yep.
Now I'm sketching the balcony. Do you understand what I'm getting at, Caitlin?
Yes. Let me take a look. Sorry.
Oh, sounds like you're eating.
Yeah.
You should have Chef Nate cook you up some schnitzel.
That's right. With a last name like that, I imagine he's pretty handy in the German cuisine department.
That's what he said he just made. His video was recording him make dinner, so we were all making fun of him.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or more sense, I should say.
Mm-hmm. And that's how I think of these things, right? I just kind of sketch them out, and then and I do it analog, right? Like we were saying to Trevor and to Case, to Alec, and then start to. So like this is the idea, and then I do it again, right? But now the next time with a scale. One of the things I always loved about our colleague Paul Wong, who used to teach with us, he says that when you sketch, right, on paper, you sketch with one hand, but you're also doing something with the other hand. You know what he said? The other hand is not to hold the paper down; it's to hold the scale, right? So you're holding a scale and you're drawing, and as you draw a line, you scale it, and then you draw another line and you scale it, right? So that that drawing becomes this, process of, invoking geometry and metrics within the process of drawing something by freehand, right? And so what you just got is completely freehand. It's completely sort of instinctual, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the second sketch is kind of just showing that channel, right, as a way of putting a border around that balcony, right? The second sketch below is the balcony. Not showing the handrail or the guardrail there, but it's showing the condition where there might be like a sliding door there, right?
think
and that sits on the slab, and then you do some sort of perimeter channel around it and clean that up below.
It looks like the same.
Yeah, I think you sent the same picture.
No, it should have a.
Let me.
Oh, maybe I did. Why didn't it pick up the second one? Oh, that's weird. I took 2 pictures. Oh, I beg your pardon. I took 2 pictures. I don't know why I didn't. Okay. I called it 3.
Okay, yeah.
So the lower portion where the drawing is cut is showing like a typical like balcony door, and it's showing how that slab goes out and then gets sort of edged, if you will, by the steel channel that would wrap on all 3 sides.
Mm-hmm.
And then the wall section that I drew in the first sketch with the metal panel, with the extruded polystyrene insulation, with the dense glass sheathing and the studs, and all of that happens where I say refer to wall above. I just didn't draw it. I'm also showing how to maybe box out that beam at the column line.
Mm-hmm.
And in that gap there, you can indicate like ventilation, right? You could do ventilation there. Anyways, I think we're all back, Dan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
So I don't really know if I have any other questions for tonight or call for any questions unless someone has something. I would say keep working on your HVAC and then working on your enlarged elevations and wall sections as we move forward. I would assume by now most everyone has got the major issues resolved. Structure seems to be worked out. I think it was good to see some development of plumbing and vent stacks going on with the one team. So it shows me that people are thinking about that issue and how that's going to be coordinated as well. I think the other part you can do is you can get caught up on areas you've had difficulties with in the past. So if you want to regain credit and standing in the lab, if you didn't do some of the bioclimatic analysis studies earlier that were supposed to be done well, you can go back at them now. Does that make sense? If you haven't had a chance to ask the question of how your project would earn lead credits, you haven't looked at Cody's report, now's the time to do that. Once again, I would say for most of you, I haven't heard or seen yet how your building is going to resist lateral loads. So if you haven't tackled that, that would probably be one of the outstanding structural issues that would be useful to have discussions on and development on soon. I would say just saying I have a stairs and elevator core may not be enough. We need further development than that. Any other questions or comments about something for tonight?
I don't hear any.
I don't hear any. So I would say for those of you that were working on some things you wanted to email me, send me some emails back. I did send some emails out to some of you tonight, more about the exterior cladding and panel systems. Some of you might, if you had a chance to open your email, you might find some information there.
Okay.
Yeah, I should be at your review. I have the schedule from Professor Farlow, and I'll be at your review on campus for your final review.
Which is
You
in
do have
4
a
weeks.
lab module coming up, though, right?
We do. Well, no. This assignment sheet is pertinent to the final review, Dan.
Right, but I think that I had an outstanding lab module that was still due yet, right?
On the 5th, if I recall.
Okay, so that should be coming up fairly soon, right? That's Thursday.
They need to verify that date. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, you'll see it there, but it should all be in alignment with the tasks that you're undertaking anyway for the studio. So,
Right.
I mean, some people ask, why are the labs there? In part, well, it is to put a focus on those technical aspects, but it's also a good pace setter for many people.
Right.
Because in order to do the lab, you have to have made some design decisions and advance the design along the way. And the labs, in a way, kind of remind you of that and kind of force the issue.
And I want to continue to enforce, as I do in the office, and certainly with you here, is that you're designing even when you're doing the wall section, right? So thinking of design not just as, you know, wearing a beret and smoking hand-rolled cigarettes, working alone in, you know, a dark studio playing Miles Davis is not what design is, right? Design is working through the whole project. And so keeping the design conversation active, even in the technical realms of the project, are really kind of important. And that's what I'm trying to emphasize.
Right, and if you don't step in and take control or be involved in it, they'll regulate it to someone else and you may regret that decision.
Bingo. Not that there's anything wrong with Miles Davis, right? Okay, so I am actually around this weekend. Casey and Caitlin, I sent one more update to that sketch. I highlighted some small adjustments in red ink so you'd see them. And if anyone needs to like update me or share stuff for me to give feedback to in the coming days, I will be happy to look at that. I'm not going anywhere this weekend for one thing. I will be on campus Thursday to see you, Hung, and everyone else that's going to be there. And
I'm on campus today.
Well, I wasn't, right? And we'll have Dustin, which I'm looking forward to on Thursday. And then I think that's it.
Yep, be seeing you on Thursday.
Thanks, everyone. Good session.
Thank you.
Happy birthday,
Thank
Cody.
you.
Yep, happy birthday, Cody.
Just one thing, the
Go ahead.
field trip to the Earthen Works is on the 11th next week, I believe.
Oh, good. And that's during the day, you told me?
Yeah, it would be during the day. It's the only time we could.
Record some videos of it when you're doing, like, because you can share those.
Will do.
Cool. Thanks.
And everyone else is invited too.
I can't wait to see this.
Do you have the waivers, by the way?
I need to get those to you.
Okay.
I will do that. Can you send me an email, Cody, to remind me about that?
Will do.
I'll take care of those.
Okay.
Thanks.
Right.